All right, welcome everybody to the Lost Beat 6 show. It's just the D.R.E and myself playing Steve today. We're coming off a very strange and very sad weekend.
Very sad.
In which
a hero.
We've lost.
To be honest, a hero. I'm not going to use that word often.
B for Hall of Fame.
B for Hall of Fame. It's sad. Anthony Bourdain. One of the guys that really, at least for you originally, you showed me him later, but you know, for you, he was really not a guiding light. That seems too corny, but
no,
yeah.
You know, I realized I'm currently working on an article to post on the Lost Beat 6 site.
I look forward to reading that.
Kind of a reflection, and we'll talk. I'll kind of go over the highlights with you tonight.
Okay, cool.
And basically,
it's June 11th, so we're 3 days after.
Correct. Yes,
it was June 8th,
and it's interesting that we look at the Beaver Hall of Fame, and we look at who's in it. And I didn't realize. I mean, we kind of knew it. And based on what we described as beef, and it's not really the healthiest lifestyle.
No, certainly not.
But I also kind of realized, you know, the people we look into it. I took a look at the list that we made a while back, a year and a half ago.
It's been a little while. Yeah. It's been a while.
And in the article, I mentioned like 3 or 4 people, and most of them were either self-destructive or committed suicide in one shape or another.
Yeah,
like a Hemingway or a Hunter S. Thompson.
Yep.
Or
no doubt about
Kerouac
that.
Drank himself to death.
Yeah, he died of
Socrates also
kidney failure.
Socrates also technically drank himself to death.
Well, he beefed it harder than anyone ever. But that's a separate discussion.
Yeah. So. And I didn't realize, like that's one of those things, that you wonder, that's one of the initial shocks of like, this is kind of, our past they chose, and
to live the life they did, and then to choose to end it the way they did. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting discussion point.
Yeah.
Outside of obviously being immediately, really devastating.
Yeah.
And scary kind of going forward.
This one is particularly scary because,
I feel like a lot of people that are not on the fence or on the edge or whatever, but, a lot of people that kind of look to Tony as like a way of, I can forget my life of whatever is bringing me down. I can watch No Reservations. I can watch Parts Unknown. I can really feel like I'm being taken somewhere, and I can really feel good because Tony was so good at really showing how different cultures, different food, like there's really a kind of a bigger picture similarity within all of us. He really encouraged everyone to be less xenophobic and whatever. I feel like he did an incredible job of showing the similarities in humans around the world.
Yeah, and
you would know this more than me. You watched more of his show.
I did, and I think more than I realized. And I just looked back, and it was only been 5. I've only known I've been a fan of his work or aware of his work for 5 years. It was like 2013 when Ryan started, first showing me the U.S. Desert episode, which is still my all-time favorite episode.
Great episode.
And little did I realize that episode probably had more to do with what I envisioned like beefing it could be.
Oh yeah.
Like that was like a blueprint. I didn't really quite realize it until now. That was extreme influence of what we try, what at least I could provide to what we do.
It's if you could write up a guy that's beefing it, that's not us, it would be Tony Bourdain.
Oh yeah,
no doubts.
And I can get my the way I express fandom or a following is usually by being fairly obsessive about learning as much as I can, to the point where I get like this encyclopedic I can like an encyclopedic breakdown of what this person's about, and it was very easy to do that with him because
there's so much content out there.
He's got the books.
Yeah, he's got the books, got the shows, got the interviews, got everything.
And so it was one of those reasons where by within 5 years I'd watched every single episode of No Reservations.
Yeah, no, I would not doubt that.
I bought and downloaded and watched every like I would pick apart each one. Like, okay, like for example, like June 2013 where Ryan showed me the Josh Homme, Joshua Tree episode. I keep saying podcast episode where they go to Pappy and Harriet's and they record at Rancho de la Luna. And
shout out to Pappy and Harriet's, great restaurant.
And Dave Ketching and those guys at Rancho, like, oh, you know what they do? They drink Corvette Summers. They eat
great drink.
They eat mesquite beef.
So good.
And they make music into the night.
Yeah, no,
it's like, this is the fucking life.
Yeah, no, it's going into a community that's not some fucking gentrified bullshit or whatever, which he was against, but understood the kind of the benefits and negatives about everything. But understanding a local scene, what makes it, what makes the scene connect with everything, be it food, music, culture, anything.
Yeah,
and he did such a good job of just showing it as it was, not promoting anything, not doing anything, but just letting you see a slice of it, And that's really how I felt.
Yeah.
Whenever I watched an episode,
and
it really felt authentic.
And it would be to the point where, like, okay, well, I had this whole iTunes library, and this is why we watch all the shows on iTunes and not like some stream service, because I just have access to it. And it just, because I bought. I'd buy a little episode. Okay, I want to go to the Greek islands. Okay, now I want to go to Rome. And now I want to go to. Now I want to go to. Turkey.
No, it's like it's a feeling of you can travel with this guy.
Exactly, and it was mainly, and I could compare him like, and I also contrast him in the article to like another travel guy that I respect, but is completely different. Is like a Rick Steves.
Rick Steves.
He's on PBS, and he's got a Traveling with Rick Steves. He's got this very Midwestern, like, oh, hey, I'm Rick Steves, and I'm going to go into... I'm going to
have some pop.
I'm going to Avignon, France today, where the papacy was. And he goes in there, he teaches you the history, he takes you to all of the tourist traps, and then eats at some bistro that you never heard of, and, like, is not really that passionate about, like, oh, my God, check this shit out. It's like, and then, he'll eat street food. He's not, like, he's not... He just wasn't nearly as engaging as just like this slice of life.
No, not at all. No. With Tony, he wanted to know what makes a region or a city, a town, what makes it tick.
Yeah.
What is the kind of driving force behind this area? And food, of course, is number one. Yeah. We all have to eat. So because he's covering food, he's going to always be at the heart of what's driving any local...
Oh, yes, yeah.
Anything.
And he'll tell you that in every single interview, which I love. I listen to every single interview I can get my hands on.
Oh, just...
A lot of them are the same stories because there's from the books and everything.
He's being interviewed by different people. He's got to tell the story, but... just the understanding of what makes a region, a town, a tribe, whatever scale it is, what makes it tick. It has to involve food.
Yeah.
And for him to start with that and then really expand into, it could be a history lesson, it could be anything, an art movement. Mm-hmm. There's so many different angles he would go with in conjunction with the food because it's always present. It's always central to whatever thing is going on in any area because we all have to eat.
Yeah, and
so to see him do that so well was just incredible. Like to see how he could tie food to the culture of an entire region and do it in a way that's really informative and unbiased and
in the early
historical,
also human, where he's just like,
well,
he'd be too cool for something
above everything,
like,
kind of human,
yeah, where he's just like, he's like awkwardly, some of those first episodes in the first season where like,
right,
he goes to Uzbekistan and like,
it's a great episode,
and shout out to Zamir. I hope you're doing okay, man. This is a tough blow, man.
It's the toughest.
Like he's like forcing Tony to go like, dance with a belly dancer in a wedding, and he's just like flailing his arms awkwardly. It's one of the honestly, he knows he's hating it totally, but the crew is loving it.
Oh yeah,
and it's making for it's a Bill Simmons great content moment, and
great content,
and things like or even the Vegas episode with Roman.
Oh yeah,
and it's like
he might be my favorite.
I just remember like, this is wrong. This is so wrong. Like, and those were the early episodes where he had like these staunch sort of machismo opinions, and or sort of just like he had that kind of punk rock attitude, even though he was still just as inquisitive. He was trying
just as inquisitive.
He probably became more. He had that kind of like the more I know, like the more I grow, the less I learn, or the less I know.
Sure,
one of those like. That George Harrison line from "It's All Too Much," the farther it's that Chinese proverb for the inner light. The farther one travels, the less one knows. And
it's an interesting. I won't discuss that phrase or what I agree with it, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Which and I find that phrase very enlightening, but or not enlightening, inspirational, because it's just like, oh, I love not knowing shit.
Yeah,
but anyway,
that's because learning shit is the coolest thing.
It is, and that's
doesn't have to be food, doesn't have to be music.
And Tony kind of came into a point in my time, and I will call him Tony because everybody called him Tony, and he probably wouldn't give a shit, And he kind of came to a point where like I was towards the end of my college career. And I was just ending it, and I was learning about these things. I go, wow, this traveling and stuff is really cool. Ryan Pressman and I were like, decided, okay, we got to go do this Papua New Guinea, and we can go to the desert just like they did. But also, and it was about a year I'd watched the shows, and I finally realized, I got to get his book. I got to get Kitchen Confidential.
That's one of the things that separated him from other TV chef personalities. He had such a way with words and his voiceovers. It really struck you in a way. His writing
is jumps off the
like
page.
The way he could put a narrative on something. Mm-hmm. It's just I've never seen anything like it.
And I thought it was. I know my probably my most important memory, or at least my important like inkling, is that for my college commencement ceremony. And if you ever commencement ceremonies are pretty god awful in general. I don't care about the speeches about traveling on, the things you'll do, and then you have to wait.
The places you'll go.
Here's, throw the rule books out the window, be yourself. I just don't, I'm not one for commencement ceremonies. And
because they fucking suck.
Of any kind. The high school ones are the worst because they have, students making terrible speeches. But
at our graduation, they were, 20 valedictorians?
I thought it was 17, but it might as well be 20. I
don't want to get into it, but I was really miserable.
I was also
miserable.
If I
ever have kids and they say, I don't want to walk, I'll be like, thank you. Let's go fucking... We're going to Disneyland. Fuck the mouse. We're going somewhere else. We're going to fucking Six Flags.
Yeah.
I don't know where we're going.
Everybody wore...
It ain't graduation. It ain't the mouse.
Everybody wore a suit and tie for the college graduation. My mom goes, you can wear whatever you want. You graduated fucking college. And I'm like, all right. So I wore my King Crimson Lark's Tongues and Aspect
nice
shirt, tan khakis, shorts, and flip-flops.
Excellent.
And I walked up. But the thing where I'm getting to is I had bought Kitchen Confidential, the paperback, for me to read, and I'm like, I'm gonna need a book to read because this commencement ceremony.
Oh, you bought that book for that?
I bought the book. Around that time, I started reading it and got like a good chunk of the way through. A good chunk, maybe got like a third to half of the way through the book.
Okay.
During that commencement ceremony.
Wow.
Because that was far more. That was far more better use of my time. Reading Kitchen Confidential.
Little preview here. History of Beefin' Part 2 takes place in this exact moment. I'll get to this later.
It's amazing how this all coincides, by the way.
Yeah, no.
You know what I mean? Like, this is...
Just a little tease here. I'll talk about this later, but what a day. I didn't even realize that you were reading that book around this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're early June or late May?
Late May.
Late May, okay. I remember that day very vividly, of course.
Yes.
Your graduation party a couple days after the commencement.
Yeah.
So this is something I will go into later. But yeah, that around that time we're definitely, wheels were moving for beef and things in general.
Yeah,
but
the wheels were in motion. For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that was, for me, that moment of my life of like graduating college, that kind of ceremony.
Right.
He'll be like, not that he knows, not that he knew or even cared, but he was very much an integral part of that for me to be reading that book during my commencement ceremony, because I just didn't want to be sitting there bored as fuck.
Right.
Watching names being read. And not everybody's like, we understand, like, commencement ceremonies, everybody's there to like support, like,
for our
families and stuff.
For our millennial friends listening to the podcast, man, our social media wasn't like this back then in 2014. You had to read a book. You couldn't just browse Twitter all day. No. But man, can you know?
The book is obviously easier on the eyes too.
No, but yes, but if you graduated from CSUN back then with today's kind of phone culture, there'd be no books. You'd probably be the only person with a book.
I probably was the only person with a book there, because I don't know
about that.
I'm pretty sure
That's 4 years ago.
That's not that long ago.
These days, 4 years ago is 25 years ago.
But I felt the Twitter culture was there then too.
Not nearly in the same way.
It was okay. Agree to disagree, but where was I going with this?
You're talking about kind of Bourdain's impact on
so
your
that was
experience.
That was
everything.
like the transition to the next educational phase, because I don't know, once I graduated, I needed to start working or start doing more things. I start not working, but like, once I
start doing something.
Once I left school, I needed to keep learning. Like, I don't want to stop. Like, I never want to have this element of myself where I'm like, congratulations, I'm done with school. Now I don't have to take classes, or I don't have to like, expand anything because I graduated college and I am set. Like there's things I would love to go back and do. I forgot to take my engineering. I could get better. I need to get better in math classes or engineering.
With something technical like that, I can understand that.
Yeah.
With all the classes I took, and there was a lot of math. Wasn't a lot of technical stuff. I never felt like that.
Either way, I wanted to take more other classes.
We're we will not digress too much.
Okay. But anyway, that was just sort of the impact. So I finished Kitchen Confidential within like a week. It was like the second fastest book I've ever read, because it was that good of a read. It was just boom and like, good.
He's got such a great way with words,
and he does a great way of not like keeping you on a subject too long. Like every other chapter would be, why restaurants fail and why you should never be a restaurateur.
It's a
because
risky business.
Like, he always talks about the dentist who made a good living and threw a great little house party, and someone says, you should open a restaurant. And then his ego gets tapped in, to say, maybe you should open a restaurant. It'll be called, Dentists, Killer Burgers, and it just
horrible shit,
whatever,
bad advice everywhere, and bad menu, everything.
It explains, he was always the chef that would go in to failing restaurants and then just close. Not that he would destroy them, but he just like he'd be the chef that they'd hire because they just needed a chef to do it, and he needed the money to do it for
Right.
He needed the drug money or the the methadone money.
Is this in the early 80s?
Well, it was in the.
I know his drug habit was a little bit earlier on.
It was like in the late 70s, early 80s. And
Yeah,
then
that's kind of like the cocaine era was 76 to 88.
He'll tell in the book, he describes his most difficult time is actually getting the withdrawal in the methadone era.
Okay.
When he was getting clean, because
So probably late 80s, early 90s.
correct, yeah. So anyway, I read that book, and then I bought just next one, Cook's Tour, which is about the Food Network show he was on.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it was always, something about what he could teach you and just about the food world, and even just like this sort of romanticized notion of like what it means to be some sort of outcast.
Yeah.
Almost like an outlaw in the world of the food. I could relate to that some ways.
I'm not going to lie here, Steve. I really feel a deep connection in what he was trying to do within food, with what we're trying to do here with the band.
Yeah.
It really hit me tonight before I called you up and want to make sure we do this podcast.
Yeah.
I really felt like the way he tried to connect with people and the honesty and the unbiasedness and the, just ignoring whatever bullshit's going on, not focusing on anything but what the subject is really what I feel like, at least personally. And I know you and Jake, I think you share the same thing. We're trying to get to the heart of the matter of a certain subject and a certain connectivity that's trying to be positive and universal. And, we're not going for the worldliness, but, we're trying to go for a connectivity that tries to go beyond whatever, not superficial, but just however people relate through music. It's not necessarily categorized, or it's not all niche, but it just sometimes it feels like people aren't listening to different types of music, or this might be more of a social media thing or whatever, but
sure.
I just think that the way Bourdain went about, describing food and describing culture and everything, it just seems in line with kind of what we're doing. And, I really realized that once you started to show me some of those early No Reservations episodes, from season 1 in 2005, which is fucking great. Like the Iceland episode, and the New Jersey episode. It's just like, it's fucking good.
And I think, for me, there's a couple episodes, and I think, if anything, he was he had this sort of educational element to it. I think
Definitely educational, yeah.
And there's
more than us.
and my favorite episodes, and I've explained this many times, are the ones where he's not necessarily traveling for, like, he's actually traveling to places. Oftentimes
Right.
it's my, like, I can count the number on my hand. It's, the U.S. desert one is my favorite, but like
Amazing.
We just watched the at the table with a couple food personalities of his friends.
Interesting episode.
A very interesting.
I got
episode.
more thoughts than I want to share on this particular pod. But interesting episode.
Or if he's traveling to anything that's a food related event, like for example the Cook It Raw convention in Japan.
Great
with
episode.
All the top chefs that he's been promoting. The Sean Brock.
Kind of waiting for David Chang's to say something. I haven't seen anything.
The Magnus Nilssons, the Rene Redzepi's.
Sorry, continue.
And then another favorite of mine, I haven't shown you this yet, is the closing of El Bulli, which I feel is probably the most connective thing for me as Lost Beat 6. The kind of
Oh, really?
yeah, for like the Lost Beat 6 sort of theme of what we're trying to do and who we're trying to please.
Okay.
And the kind of the need for this sort of growth and thought provoking creative processes and
I got no shortage of that.
and that one's another episode where he goes to the closing, the final dinner with a bunch of other food writers, and I just remember Jose Andres talking about what El Bulli meant to Farinadria, and I just remember him saying no, because it was a failing restaurant.
Okay.
In a business standpoint, it was
It's losing money.
It's in a reclusive part of Spain, not making a profit, getting not a lot of people to the place,
Probably high rent.
Probably high rent, and the idea is that no, we're not here for them. We're here for us. What we're doing here is
I
more.
can relate to that.
What we're doing here is more important than what people are
fucking money
relating
bullshit
to.
is.
So, anyway, that line resonated with me when Jose Andres was talking about that thing. Anyway, but those are themes that he would, and this is probably my biggest point about the whole
Let's go into
thing,
it.
is that Anthony Bourdain, as he would say, it was not the greatest chef. Everybody is claiming him as a master chef. Technically, he was because of his pedigree at Culinary Institute of America.
Right. He had his chops.
Well before, in his technique special is fantastic. I'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah. Well, there's parts of his technique, or maybe at large, were great, but he was never really a world-renowned chef or anything.
Not really, no.
His greatest achievement was something else.
Correct. But what he was the culinary world, or the gastronomic world's greatest facilitator.
Yeah, I think so. He's kind of like a Magic Johnson of running, he can play every position and show you everything.
I made a list of things that I would not know about had not shown had he not been a follower of his.
Right.
And I could list it. It'll be fast, but it's Dave Chang, Vietnamese Pho, Wiley Dufresne, Thomas Keller, Pappy and Harriet's,
Love Pappy and Harriet's.
Paroshki in Seattle.
Nice. Josh
Homme to a degree, but I got more.
I can't tell you about him, but
I got more into that. But
sure,
that episode was an introduction to the Queens of the Stone Age for me anyway. And Roy Choi, Cat's Deli, Franklin Barbecue.
Franklin,
shout out. Why Brunch Sucks.
Does he have an interview with Franklin?
A brief one.
We're gonna have to watch that later. Yeah. Continue.
Jose Andres, El Bulli, Farinadria, Sean Brock, Michael Roman, Zamir. Hey man, Zamir.
What a guy.
Writers like Bill Buford. I keep saying Bill Buford.
The worst version.
And Michael Rollman, and Corvette Summers. Yeah, Japanese yakitori, Sake Bar Hagi in New York City.
Hell yeah.
I mean, that's just a list.
The list goes on.
It goes on, and I was noticing in my article I wrote, I'm writing basically, I'm having a hard time remembering what things were like before Anthony Bourdain came into my life, and I don't know
if I can tell you anything about that. But what I can tell you,
I don't really want to remember
in the last year, which is when we started watching No Reservations.
Yeah.
Is that I had never really seen a guy connect with cultures like Bourdain did in such a purely positive way, in such a journalistic, humanitarian way. It's just, I didn't realize that existed, and to know that now he's not here with us is really. It's a shame, but I think we can both agree that he was an all-time beefer.
Oh, for sure.